Welcome to These Lads Are Mental. My name is Gary.
And I'm Neil, and our podcast is a lighthearted approach to normalise mental health. Before we start today's show, please listen to our disclaimer. This show is just a group of opinions and is not to be treated as medical advice. If you are struggling with mental health, please speak to your physician or reach out to a service such as Lifeline. Thank you. These Lads Are Mental recognises the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation as the custodians and traditional owners of Sydney. We pay respect to their ancestors and elders, past and present, and value their continuing connection to lands, living culture, and integral contribution to the bright and inclusive future of this beautiful city that we call home.
Next, we'll sort of shift gears a little bit, and we're looking about, first, our worry was from fatherhood to motherhood, which is a great point here. It's discussing managing being a good mum, whilst also being able to work and study to be a good role model for your daughter or your son, but at the same time, trying to balance that with spending enough time with your child and then having enough time for yourself to exercise. So there's a lot going on there, and I'm pretty certain everyone listening can resonate with.
There's also the time management, how to be more productive, quality of sleep. I think we have a whole episode on this one question.
I think we probably could. A lot of this stuff probably ties in the same thing though, because I think managing all those things, if you're going to do all those things, you do require a really solid system in time management. You need to have that time management in place to be productive. And then if you're going to be productive and manage your time effectively, you need to be well rested and have good sleep, because it all triggers from there. So I think maybe we'll start from the time management productivity side of things, because what you've suggested in terms of being a good role model and balancing that is everyone has to balance all these things at once, whether if they don't have a child, they still try to balance social life, personal life, relationships, work, career ambition, health, etc., etc. So how do you manage your time management, productivity tips, and then mindset? How do you go from reading advice, or listening to advice that we're I don't want to say we're giving advice because we're not experts on anything, but we're just giving our experience on things. But how do you then take it on board, the education you do get, and then knowing that's what you need to do, and then taking action? So that's a big problem, I'd say, nowadays, because, I mean, you're listening to us right now. You might get a few little bits of information. You think, oh, I can use that. Then you might go on social media, see a couple of bit of information. I could use that. And before you know it, you've been learning for 4 or 5 hours. You've got 55 things you need to try and implement, and you don't know where to start. You end up procrastinating and nothing gets done. So I think that's a bit of an epidemic of 2023 of having all this information and feeling also pressured that you also need to have a growth mindset. You have to educate, you have to keep, or you're going to fall behind, rather than taking a breath, taking one thing at a time and working out what it is I have to focus on right now. And I think the first thing from looking at this would be time management, ensuring you've got a good time management system. And I'll give you, I feel like I've got this pretty well down pat from my own perspective. We'll give you some resources, but I think for me, time management starts with a good system. And I think the most effective thing is, first and foremost, is getting a priority, making sure you know exactly what your priority is over the course of the week, over the course of the month, and then for each day to get you towards that priority. And that's as simple as picking 1 to 3 things maximum each day that you're going to get done that day. Meaning, these are your big rocks. If only one gets done, that's fine. 2 or 3 is fine. But as soon as you start adding 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 things are not going to get done. And to get those 3 things done, or 1 or 2 things done, is you need to time block your calendar. So 9 till 12, I'm working on project A. And in that 9 to 12 window, notifications are off on your phone. Your screen, if you're on the computer, is full screened. You're going to have 45 tabs open. You can't be distracted, because if you're distracted, there's a great book by Cal Newport called Deep Work. If you're distracted, it takes, I'm not going to quote the exact time to get back into what you were thinking about. If you're in some deep work and you're working on something hard for, say, 40 minutes, and all of a sudden you get a ding and you look at your mobile phone and it's a GIF, or it's a text message to go and pick up the milk, or whatever it might be, to then get your brain back into what you're just in, there's like a 5 to 10 minute, say, turnaround, or even more, to get back into the zone you were just in. So you imagine getting 10 of those dings, or having 50 tabs open, or someone interrupting you in your office. These are the things you have to try and eliminate. And it's tough to do. Again, what do you have within your control? You can turn off notifications on your phone. You can put your phone away to the side. for dedicated time windows, you might be in a situation where you need to be on the phone and say, well, I need to have my phone on. That's fine, but you can put settings in your phone to ignore WhatsApp. You probably don't need WhatsApp for your work. You can put on settings to turn off Instagram, turn off Facebook, so you can't check it during those windows. So I think that's the first step. I don't want to go into too much detail because I'm going to give a resource for you as well, and we've still got a lot to go through. But I think that's a great place to start. It's just prioritizing and time blocking, and you'll see your productivity 10x, 100%. Solly, anything to add?
The only thing I would add there would be how good does it feel when you do it that way? Like because I've done time blocking as well, and most of the top CEOs of the world use this as a way to form their day, because living through your inbox, which I do as well. And I'm also going to disclaimer, like, I'm not perfect at all, either is Gary. Like, I'm fucking shocking. Like, I'll get an email and I'll go, I have to answer that now. And it's something I'm trying to work on personally, and I'm nowhere near the time blocking I've done. And anytime I've done it, and let's say you do spend 2, even 3 hours or something, and you get whatever amount of it done, how good does that feel that you have that done? It's like,
the best, man.
It's the best. You're like, fuck, your whole rest of your day, you're like buzzing, got that thing to do, don't have to worry about anything else. And then everything flows from that, versus the opposite. You get 50 emails answered, and then it's 6 o'clock at night, you've had your dinner, and then it pops into your head going, fuck, I didn't do that thing. Then you start going into this spiral again. So, and look, in the very basic terms, living through your inbox and alerts, it's just the behavioral pattern that we've got ourselves into because of society. All you're doing is just breaking that pattern and forming a new pattern. That's essentially what you're doing. And in the beginning, it feels awkward, it feels goofy. But once you resettle, I think it takes something like, is it 3 weeks to reset your mindset on if you try and go through a new pattern? You do it for 3 weeks.
For habits, it's always, you've seen 21 days and 67 days. That's the two most common sort of numbers that get branded around.
Yeah, so it's not a huge amount of time, right? Just try it for 3 weeks and see if it does. And then you start forming this new pattern, and then you probably won't even remember the way you used to do it. And then you're on this track again. And we had it with our own family, because I wasn't in that space, but my wife Sue was, and she said, we need to block out our time. And I was thinking, what? And she sent me a Google Excel spreadsheet, and I was like, fucking, here we go. Monday, it was just like, Monday morning, I dropped the kid to daycare, like Wednesday night is a date night. Saturday, it's all day with him, all this kind of stuff. And in the beginning, I was like, surely we haven't got to this point, have we? And I was kicking my heels about it, going, no way. But once you just get into the groove, and then a few weeks later, it was just ingrained in my head, didn't need the Excel anymore. I just know Wednesday night is date night. Monday, I just wake up, I already know I have to drop the kid off to school. And it's just so much better, than you just...
I find what that is, Sully, is all those things you suggested, is it removes decision making. That's what it often happens, is what am I doing tonight? What should I do tonight? I've got some free time, and then feeling guilty because you're not making the most of that free time. And then that just starts taking up brain space. And then that's when you start procrastinating and getting nothing done. So when you have this time block, you go, well, that's what I'm doing then. And then obviously you're going to create gaps in your time. You don't want to just go back to back. And then you also time block the social activities, for instance, date night, or going out for drinks, or going to the football, or whatever you do in your spare time. You time block that. You time block time for yourself, and you don't feel guilty about it, because in those other times, this is when I'm getting that project done. And that is, I'm going to complete this time block until I do as much as I possibly can. Then I stop it. Then I move to the next time block. And this is all, again, think of principles again. What's within your control? Time is well within your control for the most part, or who you give your time to, who you're willing to, who do you say no to? Say no to things, because that's going to affect your time blocks. Very easy. And we experience this a lot, especially. So Sully and I have both got businesses. We also try and do this podcast, and we don't earn money from this podcast. It's a voluntary thing. So trying to balance the passion we've got to try and improve the pathways in this area, whilst trying to do a million things for our business. So when opportunities come up for the podcast, sometimes we should say no, because we've got probably priorities we have to focus on for our bread and butter, which is our business. But we accept it. We say, no, we want to go and do it because that's our passion. But then that does have conflicting interests with our own schedule, our own calendar. And that's when it's even more important to work out. If I've got a podcast, I've got my business, I need to then start saying no to other things. You can't take everything on. And to do that is hard because there's opportunities come up. Situations come up in your life that you have to say, you feel like you have to say yes to. And there's another topic we'll get onto later about peer pressure of social events or the rest of it, and feeling like you have to say yes to. When you learning to say no is quite, it's quite freeing. It's an art, but it's quite freeing when you get to say no and feeling like, who gives a fuck if I'm saying no because this is more important right now. This is what I need to do. And when you get that right, it starts to seep in to other areas of your life. And again,
you notice as a business owner, because you only have a certain amount of energy a day. You might have time in the day, but you only have a certain amount of energy. So think of it like a cup full of water. And every time you make a decision, as Gary was saying, that cup just drains a little bit. And then eventually it will just be empty and you're running on nothing. So think about that when you're giving the energy away. And a good little exercise to see, are you doing this at the moment, is if you're sitting there right now, have a think, just spend a couple of seconds here to think, if I was to look back on my day, what did I do today? And if you find yourself in the bucket, which I always find myself in going, I answered loads of emails. I sent, if you're in that kind of mode of like, you can't actually put a tangible thing on it, that's a clear sign of like, you just basically spinning plates. Whereas if you're like, today, I just got my visa lodgement sent in, took me 4 hours. That's a huge achievement versus you just going, I sent loads of emails. If you're in that bucket, that's a good sign that you maybe need to kind of rethink this. And Marcus Aurelius, we've talked about a few times, long
absolute
gone.
besties.
Yeah, well, he's ranked probably the most successful Roman Empire, or one of them anyway, emperors.
Was that a ranking? Was that a big vote? Was that?
yeah, all the food. But he's an amazing guy. He has all these teachings and meditations and things like that. But we will share his 7 things he did at night time. And one of them was around removing external stimuli, which was essentially social media and stuff like that. But there was one out of the 7 I'll just touch on now, which was around reviewing your day. And I've been doing this recently, and it's actually been really impactful for me. Just write down the things that you've done during the day, and also the things that you didn't achieve, that you didn't, I needed to do that, and put them in a separate bucket. And then what that does is that then helps you plan your next day. And if you think about that, I was like, geez, this is so simple. But then, so let's say you just didn't send off some report and you're like, okay, well then straight away tomorrow, you know, that's now a priority to me. I didn't get it done today. I'm going to do it tomorrow. Go into tomorrow. Maybe you don't do it again tomorrow, but now it's on your list. You're conscious about it. You maybe do it. You know what I mean? And that was amazing for me. And then he also talked about the decision making that you were saying, Gary, again, we think of that energy disbursement. And I'm shocking because I love my clothes and picking out gear and all that. I take ages to get ready. And anyone will tell you. But he used to have his clothes. This is 2,000 years ago, mind you, right? So it's just like, it's nothing.
How much options it have?
His pink robe or his blue robe or whatever. But he used to get his clothes ready the night before. So when you wake up in the morning, that's one decision you don't need to think about straight off the bat. And Steve Jobs.
They always did it with CEOs. It shows you like all the top CEOs and just get the same gear on all the time, like black t-shirt, pair of khaki pants, or whatever it might be, and just remove the decision. But again, I don't know how much truth's in that, but I do agree with that. Like for me, because I wear the same gear, black shorts, black t-shirt, black socks for football every single day, Monday to Friday. Gets to the weekend, I don't even ever think about my clothing. But again, that's a start. Again, it's a start, gets you on the ladder of having enough energy, your cup full, to then make decisions on other things. And then there is another question here that you've mentioned regarding the quality of sleep. Yeah. And to go full circle, everything we've just mentioned is probably going to be not very effective if you haven't got good sleep. And that can be quality and quantity. This is an area that I work quite a lot in, working with athletes. The quality of their sleep is essential. So if I'm working with a semi-pro or a pro player, or even working with younger athletes, try to get some habits here, the quality of their sleep is essential because they have to recover, they have to train hard. But the same principles lay back to just the general population as well. And I say general population, I see it's try to be a high performer in your life, or for me in sport. For that, you need good sleep. You need to move your body. You need to look after your brain. You have to eat well. And sleep's obviously a pillar in that for recovery of the mind, recovery of your body, digesting information, retaining education, which is going back to what you've mentioned already in terms of reading things or educating yourself and how do you retain that information. You need good quality sleep. So in terms of suggestions, again, I'll put that in the resource section, but some really, really simple things, and you'll find common trends in what we're saying here. Get your phone out your bedroom, that 1 hour window leading up to bedtime. Reduce your stimuli. That might be TV screens. It might be like for people I work with, they play football late at night, their training session at night time, they come back wired. So try to get them down so their body is in a really sympathetic state. It's high, it's wired, or fight or flight. To get them back into parasympathetic, they have to do things intentionally. For you or other people, you might not be exercising late at night. You might just be chilling at home, but you might be watching Netflix, an action movie. You might be watching something on social media that's got your emotions going for whatever. You're getting your body back in that sympathetic state, and you want to get it back down into parasympathetic. That's basically rest and digest, where your body, you're stimulating your body to relax and signals it to get to sleep. So how do you do that? You remove your mobile phone from your bedroom altogether. Get yourself an alarm clock. Again, it's within your control. Then on top of that, make sure your room's good temperature. Make sure your bed's comfortable. Make sure, again, that hour before bed, everything is pretty much you time. Do something that helps you relax. Maybe it's read a book. Maybe it's, if you can't do any of this stuff, make it half an hour. You can watch no TV half an hour before bed. You can avoid
even if it's 10 minutes, like, you know, just start.
Yeah, it's a starting point. Yeah, get on the
Yeah.
ladder. 10 minutes. Start with 10 minutes, and then for me, I like to stretch before bed. Just a simple 5-minute stretching routine. That's me. That might not work for you. Some people I know do a very simple breathing exercise. If that's not for you, that's fine. But there's thousands and thousands of different ways. Or thousands, that's exaggerating, but there's lots and lots of different ways. And again, we'll put these in the resource section that you can do, but the principle remains the same. Get yourself out of that sympathetic nervous system state of being wired psychologically or physically and back into parasympathetic, because stress, physical, emotional, mental stress is the number one thing that impacts sleep. If you really, really feel like you're no stress and all the rest of it, you can look at very natural supplements like magnesium chelate or things like that. But again, that I use that and it's super, super useful. But I'd try just basic things to start of winding down before bed. You probably know this, common sense. Anyone listening, you know this is the right answer. You know this is what you should be doing. You know you shouldn't be on your phone right before bed, staring at a bright light before bed. You know you shouldn't be watching mental TV shows or something that gets you angry or whatever it might be. However, where you can, possibly take action, take a small step, try a routine, try one thing. Don't try 3 or 4 of these things. Try one of the things. Try one.
Well, a little tip that's worked for me a bit also is, like, again, the Marcus Aurelius thing is the 7 steps, and Gary's kind of talked pretty much to all of them, like eliminate external stimuli, get some physical exercise, which is the stretch idea that you said there, Gary. The review your day is what I was saying. So get a notepad, write down your things. That then helps the next thing, which is preparing for your next morning. So it's always, you the guys listen, I'm just saying, when you prepare yourself the night before for the day ahead, you always feel less stressed the next day. Then spend time with family. He did that every night. Tuck in your kids, kiss them goodnight every night. Spend that little bit of time with them so they know that you're around. But the only other thing we haven't touched on, which was one of the last ones of his 7, was if you're worried, stressed, or in that kind of state of, I've got loads on, is called perspective. So there's a little exercise that he does. You can do this when you're lying in bed, is contemplate your own scenario, right? So you might have a few issues going on in your head, right? And basically what you're trying to do is remove yourself above that, and you're trying to visualize it from above you. So just think about what you've going on at the moment. Okay, my relationship is a bit whatever, work's a bit thing, fair enough. Think of those in your head. Then go into your wife or your partner, then go into your extended family, then think about the street. Well, what kind of stuff do they have going on? Then go into your neighborhood, then go into the city where you live, going, what are all the lives are going on there, all different things. Then go from a planetary point of view, and then cosmic, what goes into making the universe. And when you actually remove yourself and then think of things that are much bigger than you, what it actually does, it reduces the hold that those worries have on you, which in essence are really just minutiae. If you think about the little things that are impacting you on the grand scheme of things which is going on in the universe, it kind of takes the power away from them. I found that really, really beneficial as a little mini exercise to do. And then what you could do, because as Gary was saying, you're not going to remember all these things. Write them down on a sheet of paper, stick them on your fridge. I thought that, like, for me, that always helps, because you're always using the fridge, and it's about to go to bed. What was that other thing that he was telling me about? Go to the fridge. Oh yeah, that's that. And after a while, you'll be ingrained into your system. And then once you have that system, it's like meditation. I've trained to do meditation, but I don't do it all the time. But at least you've always got it. You've always got that tool in your toolkit that you can pull on whenever you want. And that little fridge trick is a nice way to keep it present and front of mind. Or if you're sitting at a desk, the pin board, I used to love doing all that, like you'd have a vision board, pin it on your desk so it's constantly there and you're always seeing it.
So one thing I think to address at this point so far on the podcast is we've mentioned a lot of different things. We've went through different topics. We've mentioned millions of things. The point of this isn't to suggest like one of those social media things like this is Mark Wahlberg's morning. It's got 45 things done by 9 o'clock in the morning. This is definitely not what I'm suggesting. I'm suggesting the other end of the spectrum where you figure out from all the things, maybe the topic that we've discussed, what applies to you, and pick just one tool, and then go back to what Sully suggested with the psychologists. The first thing you try might not work for you. Give it a chance. Give it 3 weeks. 21 days is a good time frame to really go through the ups and downs of it. See if it works. If it works, obviously, good, great, keep it going, and maybe you can add something else. But if it doesn't work, don't think, well, that's it, I'm shafted. Take something else, take another tool, because there's loads of tools, as Sully mentioned. There are tools. You're going to have different tools in your toolbox for each of these things or for your environment. For instance, exercise. You might be in a situation where you can't exercise. Might be a situation where you can't put your phone somewhere else. So you have different tools to help you remove yourself in that environment. So we will provide the resource section, but going back to simple things is picking just one tool and sticking with that. Don't get overwhelmed with thinking you have to create this perfect day, because I can't do that. I don't do that. Neil doesn't do that. And nobody, what you put on social media, nobody can live like that over a long period of time. Maybe over a week or some sort of crash course for 28 days, but not long term. And that mental health is a long term, consistent thing we're trying to improve.
And that's the thing. Unfortunately, the unfortunate thing about all this is there's no silver bullet. There's nothing that me and Gary can say that's going to work for all of you just in one thing. That's just the way it is. But the great thing is that there's so many things that you can do. And to give an example, like we had Rory Warnock, who's a fellow Scotsman. He was on our second episode, and he went to a breathwork class in London, UK, 7 or 8 years ago. He was in a pretty bad place at that time. Absolutely changed his life. Now he's over here in Sydney as well. He's the official breathwork coach for Sydney Swans. He does Google, Nike, all these brands. And now he's a full-time breathwork coach. And that's just because he went to one breathwork session. Now I could go to 100 breathwork sessions and it's never going to have the same impact on me than it does to him. I love doing the breathwork thing and it's in my little routine. I love it, but it didn't have the same impact that it had on him. But that's what we're saying. You could just do one thing and it could change your whole life. You might quit your job and go and do this thing because you've done that thing. And that's great, but it could be totally different to someone else. So
what is it? There's a question for you then. What is one thing that you reckon you have done that has been that thing that helps you for mental health? One thing, don't give me 50, just give one.
Oh, fuck. Look, the latest thing, when I did that first breathwork course, it did blow my mind. But ice baths definitely have been a huge thing for me with mental health.
Mental health?
Yeah, because it trains your parasympathetic and sympathetic mind. So I go into that shock mode, worrying, I'm shit, like, what are they talking about me, all this kind of stuff. And, I get heightened, I get triggered a lot at the moment where I'm at. When you go into an ice bath, put your body into that trigger mode and you're training your body to re-regulate your nervous system, your vagus nerve. Some people might have heard that. So ice therapy, cold water, whatever, there's loads of names for it. It triggers your vagus nerve. So switches your vagus nerve on, and then you're training your vagus nerve. We go to the gym, we do HIIT classes, we do all those things, but how often are you actually training your mind? Not much, right? But ice baths do that. So the more you do that, the more another thing people say is your window of tolerance. You're expanding your window of tolerance, going, I can cope with this. So then when you're in real life and you get a shitty email from your boss or something like that, it's not going to trigger you as much as it might have done before because you've been training your mind to deal with these situations. And it is a bit naff, but people talk about the saber-tooth tiger analogy. Adrenaline, you know, all those things are part of our evolution, right? Because they needed to be. At one point, we needed to have adrenaline to be able to run faster than the saber-tooth tiger or whatever. Adrenaline also stops you from wanting to eat, because at that moment, eating food is not a priority. It's life or death. So that was all well and good back then. But now when you fast forward, we're going into that same state of mind over an email, you know, which is not life-threatening, you know, and that's where we're at the moment with stimulation and social media and all that. Now our bodies are being retrofit to be stressed in environments that are not stressful. So that's why it's good to practice training our body to cope with that stress, knowing that this is not a life-threatening thing. So you don't get triggered. And that has been a big light bulb moment for me, definitely in the last, maybe I've been doing it for about a year. And again, not religiously. And my last point here, if you see shit online, and I'm in the wellness game, there's a load of toxicity in wellness. People going, I train 5 days a week, I only eat fucking green kale and all this stuff. I know they're out on the weekend fucking smashing, you know, the bag, you know. And that's also, that's
bag of kale.
That's a bag of kale. Schnock that we say in Ireland. But that's also okay. Like if they do that, great. But don't go projecting as if you don't do that. You know, that for me really pisses me off when I see like a lot of like big time influencers and like unbeknownst to you, like they're probably getting free classes, you know, and personal trainers with them twice a day, every day and all this kind of stuff. So they have the luxury to, you know, like it's that you just be mindful of that toxicity out there, that like people projecting that stuff, that's not real. It's much better. Like, you know, I eat burgers, I do all those things as well. I'm not happy with my body shape as well. We're only human, you know? So just remember that. Yeah.
Quality. So we've still got quite a few to get through here. But again, a lot of these will overlap, so we'll just spend as much time as we have to on each. So next question discusses, this is a big topic really, isn't it? Young men. So we're going to imagine, it says, how can you encourage your sons to talk about how they're feeling, as they don't think to ask each other or ask their mates how they're doing? And then it goes on to ask a question on how do you handle if someone says they're not okay. So tackling the young men part first, this is something.
Well, this reminds me of you, Gary, why you reached out to me. Maybe you could tell everybody from your background working with kids and what you were experiencing.
Yeah, I mean, very quickly, part of the players that I work with, I'll say about 40% of them are youth athletes. So looking at like 13 to 16-year-olds or 12 to 16-year-olds. And during COVID, I noticed their mental health spiraling, which was very eye-opening for me, because I just thought these kids were invincible. So say over a 12-week period, the first few weeks I got them, they were usually bubbly self, loved being off school. By week 7, week 8, to be honest, by body language, they were starting to look depressed. And then by the last few weeks, they started to verbalise that they were effectively missing their friends. They hated being at home. They didn't enjoy anything anymore. They were starting to lose any sort of touch with who they were before COVID had happened, because they've been isolated for so long. So that hit me quite hard, seeing how the youngsters were affected with it. And this is boys and girls. And then it wasn't a youth athlete, it was a 19-year-old boy. He was going through a similar thing, he was a player as well. And little did I know that when he was training with me during that time, it turned out that it saved his life, because one of his parents approached me at a coffee shop and told me that if it wasn't for the opportunity they had to come and train and get them out of the house several times a week to continuously practice the physical side of the game, the physical side for their football, they would have committed suicide, and that was the way they were going. So that was pretty much what it was a catalyst for me to reach out to Neil and start this whole podcast. But I'll say young men, because that's the question I asked, and I'll probably predominantly I do work with, if it is youth athletes, it's a lot of boys, sorry. So, I mean, it's a tricky one, really, mate. I mean, it's a big topic. How do you get them to talk about their feelings? And especially now.
One thing I would say is I do think kids probably going to be more emotionally aware than previous generations first. So that's
I agree with that.
That's the good news, right? So the verbalization, I think, is coming a lot more. Like I go to a chiro, and she was telling me that her son, he's about 12, 13, and she said she's been astounded by how open he is about how he's feeling. Like if he's in a bad mood, she goes, "Everything okay?" And he goes, "No, I'm not really. I'm a bit upset because something like this happened in school." And she was like, "Gosh, that's amazing that he's actually telling me this." So I think that's definitely good. Conversely though, kids of that generation or this new generation, like we have no idea, even at our ripe young age, like they're being reared with social media. Like I'm a bit worried about my young fella. He's 2. He's already able to swipe. He knows how to turn on Netflix, and he's 2 years of age. Like I didn't
on
have
Tinder, isn't he, the wee man?
What?
The wee man's on Tinder.
He's on Tinder, yeah.
Learned him to swipe, he's straight on it.
It's frightening. Like he knows how to make phone calls. He answers, like he goes around with the camera on and he pans it, and he just like that's like I had my first mobile phone, I think, when I was about 13 or something like that, and there was no cameras on that even at that point. So they're going to be like, technology is just ingrained in their life. It's just there's no way around that, right? And the influence it has on them is going to penetrate a lot deeper than it did with us. And you hear a lot in America, particularly, and I think it happens a lot, particularly with young girls in America. You hear of all these awful stories of girls being bullied in school, on social media, for no reason, like, you know, just being called like a slut or something like that. And then that goes onto a group chat and and then like there's 13-year-olds taking their own lives because of people bullying them in a digital environment. You know, it's become a bit of a
statistics. Statistics. One of our friends, and who's also a guest on the podcast, Nick, who works with it, his charity really focuses on the youth space quite a lot, and they do phenomenal work working with the youth. And I think that's really where a lot of the energy, we don't ignore the adults, of course, but I think that is the next generation, and we do have to start from the ground up and making sure that children are. I think it is going in the sort of right direction, to be fair.
Yeah, but I think it can go the other. Like I've heard also other things of everyone. The one thing I would maybe be a little bit cautious of is I've heard people say that, you know, when something bad happens or they're sad or a kid is upset or things like that, going back to the whole like emotions and being able to, experience all of them. I've heard now people going on antidepressants at young age and just being given medication and going, well, you've got depression, you know, like diagnosing people too early.
Getting labelled, yeah. Yeah,
being labelled. So just be conscious of that, because look, school is hard, right, for any kid. Growing up is hard for any kid. You go to, you get rejected from prospective partners. You might, like, I was bullied as a kid. Like, you know, you're going to go through awful things, and there are impacts to that. But try not to like just immediately tarnish them with some kind of mental health condition, and then it starts getting in their head, I got the depression and da. Like, be careful labeling things. I think definitely would be my advice on that. It's okay to feel upset. That's natural. But I think, and then like going back to Batir, which is the mental health charity that Gary mentioned, that Nick we interviewed, the statistic that stuck with me was 75% of our mental health conditions manifest before we turn 18. That's where most of these foundational things start. And their whole work is educating kids around awareness, and it's okay to not be okay. And if it is, to talk to someone about it. And if you can set up that nice bubble around you, that awareness bubble, when you it's a lot harder when you're a 40-year-old adult trying to unravel things that you're an 8-year-old, because I've had to go through all that. And so if kids are more aware of that growing up, it's a good thing. And they'll be able to manage that before it becomes more of a systemic issue with you in the long run. But I think leading by example as parents is our responsibility. If your kid is upset, to listen first, the whole thing of seek to understand first before, giving back advice.
Yeah, empathy.
Yeah. Let them know that you're there and you're present for them. You're hearing their worries. You're acknowledging it, and you don't even have to provide a solution, really. But once you provide an ear for them, they feel heard and appreciated and things like that. That is well rewarded. But creating an environment that they feel comfortable coming to you and speaking to you, I think, is...
Yeah, I think set an example. If any kids are in a situation where their parents don't talk at all, or they don't talk about that sort of thing, they're probably less likely to do it. At the same time, encouraging, if you can encourage them to do it, it might only take one conversation where they don't feel like they're being lectured or judged or being forced their opinion upon. As you said, just listening to them. It might take a lot of times where you've asked them, "Oh, how are you feeling?" and it might knock you back, but it might just take that one time where they do speak, and you reply without judgment. You don't give any solution. You just listen to what they're saying. That can be enough to unlock the door to think, okay, now I feel comfortable. I can then approach them again, because the last time it went really well and I felt a little bit better talking to my mum or my dad about it. But I do think it's a big topic. I mean, how do you encourage? I think naturally we do, especially in our teenage years, don't want to share a lot with our parents because you're going through a lot. Body changes, peer pressures. It's pretty cool not to hang about with your parents. Like when you're younger in primary school, your parents will drop you off at school or whatever. Get to high school, fuck off. I don't know what I've been seeing at the school gates for you. So I think that's a natural evolution. And I think that's as a tricky one. I do see more positive change in that area where schools, whether or not it's right or wrong, how they're going about it, I do see it getting tackled. At least there is a bit of urgency to tackle in schools and make sure that they are more open or promoting that it is okay to feel certain ways,
I'll give you a quick example, right? In my scenario, right, my mum is an alcoholic, and when I was about 12, I started to see her, you know, face planted on the floor and dragging her to bed with my dad and all that. And then, you know, she's your mum, so you're trying to help her and do all those things. And the bit, like, it's obviously easy being Captain Hindsight, but looking back on that now, what maybe my dad didn't lend to us at that time was he never sat us down and said what was going on, you know? Like, yeah. I don't know if this had, like, you know, I can only guess, right? But if he had just sat us down at that point and said, look, mom has a bit of difficulty with alcohol. We're going to try and help her through this as a family. There's going to be highs and lows, you know, whatever, but, you know, we all love her and we're going to do our best to help her. If that level of kind of involvement would have been there, like, I do think maybe I would have been able to compartmentalize it better. Instead, it was never spoken about, brushed under the carpet kind of a thing. And then I just grew up like not really knowing what to do with that emotion. Then I started to internalize a lot of that. And then I hold a huge amount of resentment from my mum for years, only up until the last few years after doing work to put all that stuff to bed. So it's just like 20, 25, 30 years worth of baggage that you're carrying, which, you know, really didn't need to be there, you know. And same with sex education, same kind of thing. No one ever sat me down. I know it's a bit naff going, like, you imagine your dad going, well, this is what a boner looks like, son, and hooking, you know. But like, I never had any of that kind of stuff. And I remember, like, this is yeah, like, I remember we had one sex ed class in school, that was it, and it was just
put a Johnny on a dildo.
You can imagine how.
I think we had two. We put a Johnny and a dildo, and the next one we watched a woman give birth. That was it. Fucking hell!
What a shotgun education on sex education. But I remember thinking, like, a blowjob was you went like you blew on your Mickey.
I had to tell you that off camera, didn't I?
Yeah. So I was like, fucking, and then I always remember a guy called Colin Lawford who said he got kicked out of class for asking this question, but he was like, what happens if you leave your... God, this is so bad. Sorry, guys. And the HR team is probably going, how do we let these guys on? He goes, what happens if you leave your dick inside? Like, can you go to sleep like that? and the teacher was like, get out! But like, that was literally it. And like, it is scary when you start getting all these feelings. You don't know what's going on. And then, but also, like, the serious side to that is, like, I was never taught about, like, going back to my mum, right? So already I had this bit negative connotation with my mummy issues, you know, females, that kind of thing. And then you start going through puberty. And for a large chunk of my adolescent life, like, I didn't have long-term relationships. I didn't see, like, you know, anyone got too close to me from a female perspective, I pushed them away. You know, so there was like really long-term impacts of me for like a long time. And I never saw, I had this weird thing with, you know, girlfriends were just, you know, I don't want a girlfriend, you know, I don't let anybody into me to see my fucked up world kind of thing. So those, like, they're the kind of things that can happen if they're not addressed in the moment, you know, the kind of way. So I think nurturing that environment that and that's look, that's hard, right? It is hard to create that environment, but leading by example, I think, is probably the only thing we can do as parents, right, in our control, to go, well, if they, because they're sponges, right? Kids are sponges. If they see you being emotional, they see you crying, they see you being open about your feeling, daddy's not feeling that well today, can we maybe go to the park tomorrow, he's a bit sad, like those things, then they'll recognize that and they'll feel comfortable bringing things like to you. That's just my 2 cents on it. Like, obviously hard to know that, but I think leading by example is probably my advice on.
Yeah, I think, again, go back to resources. The Matt Ralston's episode, he talks about that a little bit as well. So again, in the resource section, we will tie in each question you've got to a resource. And the last part to that question, or that topic, was how do you handle if someone says they're not okay? Because this is something, obviously, Are You Okay Day, which has became a little bit, I don't want to say, it sounds bad, but it's became a little bit of a throwaway thing, hasn't it? Unfortunately, this was I don't want to say the message behind it is done obviously with the right thought behind it. We want to promote mental health, but having one day for it and saying, if someone says, "Are you okay?" "Yeah, I'm sound, mate. How are you?" It's just that, as you said, people don't want to really put that on other people, or they don't want to share it. The problem is, at a fundamental level, is people don't want to share how they're feeling because they don't feel comfortable for whatever reason. And if it does, are we prepared? Are we really trained or prepared as individuals? If I turn around to you one day, Solly, and says, "All right, mate, how's things?" and then you did just let rip and you put everything out there, I mean, am I trained to do it? Do you need to be trained? Is it too much for one person? Someone actually mentions in a future question about making family and friends feel guilty about how they're feeling, and they don't want to put that on them, which is another avenue completely. So how do you handle it? I think the only thing that I could say is what Neil's already mentioned when we spoke about for children, is be as empathetic as possible and listening, not giving advice. And I think there's been a few experts already we've had on who have said this is a common theme, is as humans, we want to help, so we want to give our advice, but just listening and just being there can be worth 10 times the advice. People often don't want advice. They just want somebody to talk to, someone to vent it to, a soundboard, as opposed to internalizing it year on year on year or day on day. They want just someone to hear them, and then most importantly, they want to feel heard. They feel like, yeah, I understand. Yeah, okay, that must be hard for you. Tactical empathy is one thing. There's a book I'll put in here for you by Chris Voss. Chris Voss is someone I'd recommend. He's an FBI negotiator. Sounds completely off on a tangent, but he is a world expert when it comes to listening, being empathetic. And
or you can do what you just did there, Gary. If you're gonna feed back rather than giving a solution, like give them an open question, like how did that make you feel? Or how of course,
let them say it, let them explore those feelings, but not saying what for me is, this is what I recommend, because then people are like, well, this is not what I'm fucking. It doesn't fucking matter. You don't get it, because then it can often cause conflict. I think. Yeah,
because Gary, remember we laughed at that in one of the episodes. It was Nuala, who was an art therapist, and we were saying, it is hard when you're on a podcast when somebody's saying something pops. Like, just so you guys know, when he's talking, I'm thinking, oh fuck yeah, that's just reminding me to say this thing. Then all in my head I'm thinking about is, how do I get my thing in? And then I'm not listening to Gary at all. And we were going through this, she was talking about this, and we were like, fuck, that's happening right now. So how can you be present and listen to whoever it is if you're already thinking about, oh well, this thing happened to me, the kind of way?
Oh, I think that's, I mean, we're all guilty of that. When someone talks, you think to yourself,
and it's actually, one little thing, because I've also done marriage counselling, full transparency as well. A lot of things have changed in the in the last few years of my life. Well, back in the old day, dating apps, like I've been with my wife 12 years, and dating apps weren't the thing. There was no Tinder back in the old days. There was eHarmony, and you wouldn't tell anyone you're on eHarmony. You get bashed in the schoolyard if you tell people you're on eHarmony. So there was no apps at that point. And same at marriage counselling. You'd never tell anyone you were going to marriage counselling. If you went, oh yes, Sue and I got to marriage counselling, fuck, they're on the rocks, those guys. Oh good, where did they gotta go? But honestly, it was a brilliant thing, because it's like anything in life. especially if you're strong characters and you're different, we're very different, but resolving conflict has been a problem for us, let's say, because like you have an opinion, they have an opinion, and some things you hit a wall, right? And the really cool exercise we picked up there is a listening exercise. So this can be applied to like your kids, is what I'm trying to say here, rather than just like you having issues with your partner. But if you can't find a resolution, you let them speak and you can't say anything. Then you can speak. They can't say anything either. And you can just go through a few rounds of that. And then that's it. You don't have an opportunity to debunk what they've said. You're just simply airing your thoughts, and none of you are allowed to rebuttal on what is being said. And that's actually, it's actually a brilliant exercise. And you're sitting there and you're like,
fuck off.
Yeah, I don't fucking do it. You're not allowed. That's the rule. Yeah, that's the rule. You're not allowed. And you can referee and go, no, you're not allowed saying. And then, gets them more shitty. But it's actually a brilliant exercise. So it's the same. Think of that even with your kid. It's like, tell me how you're feeling, Joey, or whatever. And just try and hold back the urge to say anything. And if you have to do anything, just prod them. Well, how does that make you feel now? What do you think? There's other things like, what do you think you could do to help your scenario? Is there anything I can do to help your scenario? Like those kind of things are much better, because then they're actually problem solving, their own issues, which seems to be a lot of the advice we've heard is the best way to do it, and it's the most rewarding thing for them, rather than, you telling them what to do, which doesn't really seem to, especially with this generation, certainly does not seem to work, because they're the future generation. They're all independent human beings now. They all, that's what they are kind of being reared as. So yeah, that old school do it this way, I don't think is going to work,
Well, I think, that was, what did you say, about an hour and a half or something, do you reckon that is so far?
Yeah, I think we've
not far off. So I think what we decided to do is break this into two parts. I know you're doing Mental Health Week, and this is obviously getting pre-recorded. So we're going to release two different episodes to you guys first internally, and you can do what you like over the whole week. Hopefully we've provided. Vera spoke a lot of shite, which we usually do anyway, but. Again, just to go back to what this podcast is about, it's just to show that having a conversation about these mental health things. Sully spoke about marriage counselling, being bullied. We spoke about how we felt, how we see our self-worth, fatherhood, motherhood, even time management, coping strategy. All these other things we spoke about should just be casual. And again, you want to do it in the right environment with people you trust. Of course, you don't want to just blab about it to random people. But the goal is to make these sort of conversations not make people think, fucking hell, what are you mentioning that for? Again, have boundaries, have privacy and all the rest of it. But as a general overview, speaking about how you're feeling, if you have to get it off your chest, the people you trust should be completely normal. And everything that's been mentioned so far and everything that we'll speak about in the next episode, I can resonate with almost every single part of it. I've felt this way or have questions that you're asking every single time, and all we'll try to do is encourage people to keep having these questions and encourage you to try one thing to make a positive change, that micro change that might be the macro change in your life. And please try something. You'll have the resource section. We will be back with the second episode and touch on all the other questions. Can't thank you enough for being so open with your questions, and again, superb work on trying to make some impact with mental health. Phenomenal.
Yeah, because it's just the ripple effect, and it's the toolkit analogy. These are just all little tools in your toolkit, and you can pull them out whenever you need them, whenever you remember them. And when you find yourself in a scenario, it will come to you. You'll go, oh, what was that thing the guy said? And then you'll tap back into it, and then you'll be able to plug in. And then, yeah, it's a ripple effect. You do it. You tell your mates. What's the average thing? You'll tell at least 10 people in your immediate circle of this.
Yeah. That's a watch. Yeah,
and then that goes around. And I actually went to give you an example of it, I went to a talk from IKEA, their head of design here in City. It was a good few years ago. And somebody asked a question from the crowd going, I stayed in Sweden for a few months. I couldn't get over how clean and everybody recycles and over there. How did you do that? And the guy was like, well, it was actually a big issue for us 20 years ago. But they brought in a system into the education where they taught just the kids, the next generation, on how to recycle property. And they said within a 20-year period, what the kids were doing was they were taking that home and educating their parents, going, I've learned this in school, we need to recycle. And then they ended up telling their grandparents. So by teaching the one generation, it actually changed the whole thought processes for the two generations previous. So that's the impact. That's where you think, oh, this is all a bit woo-woo. It's like if we start doing this piece by piece, kids, even in our everyday life, it make an impact. It will. And
you're not immune. That's the thing, mate. You're not immune. Anyone listening, and there's probably a point in the last 20 years, mate, and I'm the exact same. Well, mate, what a shite, man. I don't need to talk about my feelings. I don't. And it's not mental health. Again, I don't want to keep saying talk about my feelings, because that's not what mental health necessarily just is. It's not just about like the extreme suicide. It's not just about I have to be emotional and start crying and all the rest of it. It's simple things: stress, anxiety, like worry, self-doubt. All those things they're all part of it. And mental health is also the good part of things, where you see someone being confident and proud of herself, or having looking happy or feeling happy in life. That's the stuff we need to discuss as well. If you are in a good place, share it. Let people know you are doing well, because this makes, if I know my wife is happy and she's enjoying herself, it naturally gives me energy, because I know, brilliant, I don't have to invest energy into making sure that she's all right, or my family's all right, or the rest of it, because I can focus all my energy on me at this point. And you have to give and take. Sometimes she'll be 20% and I have to be the extra to keep us together. And that'll happen with every relationship.
Yeah, I've heard that from, is it Mel Robbins talks about that in America? She's quite, she's amazing lady. She talks about that you and your partner, whoever it may be, or your kids, you're never all going to be 100%. But by creating this environment of openness, if you're at 100% on Monday and your partner's at 20%, then you can equilibriumize, level each other out. Like you're never both going to be on 100. So you might be at 20% today, and maybe it's your day with the kid, but if you're having a shocker, then your partner is aware of that. They can come in, take the kid, look after it, and give you a dig out. And, so you kind of yo-yo like that during the week as well, which is... And
it comes to communication, all that again. But again, mental health, guys, is just... it's such a big topic, man. Every time we're probably rabbiting on again, but every time we start talking about it, I just get... I don't want to say excited, but I just feel like this is the shit that we need to sort, because...
But it's just, these are kind of real conversations that like we should be having. If we were having all these at a mature level frequently, the actual issue of it would just slowly come down. That's the whole thing. It's very heightened at home because we're trying, but like if this becomes ubiquitous where everyone's talking about it, like dietary requirements, as we said at the beginning, eventually it's going to get to the point where it's really going to level out. And that's the beauty about this, is by doing those small things in the moment, you might not necessarily, you'll get a little short-term benefit from it. Like, if you do a meditation, for example, you're going to get short-term benefits from it. But if you do them consistently, the beauty is, and I've had this happen to me before, it could be 6 months down the line, you'll just be sitting somewhere randomly, and you just go, and you'll get this, fuck, why am I feeling like this? You might just look in the mirror and go, geez, I'm very proud of you right now. Shaka. But you'll get those lovely moments somewhere in the future going, wow, you're doing all right here, mate. And the only reason why you're getting that is because you put in the work, like, you know what I mean? You've done those gratitude things, you're sleeping more, you're doing whatever it may be, but you will get those lovely aha moments going, fuck, this is actually quite nice, Yeah.
I think it's mental health isn't something they're trying to, it's not something that's eliminated or something that has to be fixed. It's about being aware of it and talking about it, because mental health is like physical health. It's just there. Your health is your health. It's just there. It's something that's going to be up and down. It's never going to get eradicated. It's not, it can be great. It can be bad. It's going to be ups and downs, but being aware of how do we manage it as best we possibly can. Because remember, this isn't about trying to be the best business person or successful. This is about tackling a real problem. Suicide rates are ridiculous. Depression rates are ridiculous, not just in adults, but in children as well. So this isn't something we just, it is woo-woo, but this is reality, that it is a real problem in the world. And it has to start from the basic stuff, and it starts with you, starts with us. So that's what, especially adults, teaching children, talking to children, sharing it with each other, and trying to make a real impact.
Yeah, and then my last Jerry Springer final thought moment would be that I hate that people go, it's a real thing over here. I know it's like back home in the UK, but that whole thing of be the best version of yourself. Like I've said that, I fucking hate that, because what is the best version of you? Like, how do you know? Like, what does that mean? Like, if you have a fucking brand new BMW, or no one truly knows how to really measure that. So I just think that's a bit wanky. And then the other thing is, when you start talking about this, at the beginning it seems a bit overwhelming, and Gary's already alluded to it. There's so much things we're talking about. I know you might be sitting there going, fucking hell, where do I start? All this kind of stuff. But when you go down that path and just explore and try things and move on and things, what it does is, awareness can bring you, at the beginning it can be overwhelming, you're like, there's so many things. But eventually when you go through it all, what awareness actually brings you is control and power and choice. Because now you're aware of things. So as Gary's saying, with things like suicide and so forth, if you get to a place where you understand yourself quite well, your family around you understand you quite well, when you start to notice then you slipping back into a certain pattern, right? And that could be, just to make an example, you might get short with your wife, you get short with someone in work, and you get short with someone on the football field or whatever it is. And when you've gone down this exploration thing, all of a sudden you go, well, hang on a second, because it will pop into your head going, geez, I've been a bit shitty here the last few weeks. What's going on? And then you start kind of like going, well, okay, maybe. And like you'll if you actually look back, you go, okay, well, haven't been getting much sleep, eating a lot of fast food, and you start going, okay. And then and this is where all the control starts coming. Now you've got a choice. Now you can decide, okay, well, I need to get my sleep sorted, and so on and so forth. And that's the sweet spot, because now you're educated, you're empowered, and now you've got choices you can make. Whereas if you're completely oblivious, you push stuff under the carpet, you're not gonna have any of that. And that's where I think ultimately when people make that decision, the ultimate decision to maybe pass on is, when you haven't had that opportunity to kind of, look at yourself and look at your scenario and be aware and understand, and then make those right choices, So yeah, that's the really exciting bit. That's the bit where you're like, and everyone has to do that individually and by yourself. But when you get to that point, it is really empowering. And that's why the work that we're trying to do with Gary is that if we could get everyone to that point of being comfortable and empowerment and education, like, I guarantee those numbers would come down. It's not to say they'll ever be eradicated or anything, but if we empower more people to have the education and be able to make choices, surely it's going to bring that number down.
Yep. Perfect, mate. Well, we'll wrap this up, and we'll do however we do this, part 2, and then we'll split this in half and do part 1, 2, 3, and 4, however we do it. But we've got about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 more questions to get through, 5 more topics. There's a little bit of overlap, but you guys took the time to write a question in there, and we'll definitely take the time to give you.
Thanks, guys. Hope we didn't rabbit on too much. Lots in there.
Definitely did, man. But fuck it.
Fucking 5 hours later, you're like, fuck, am I getting paid for this? Like, fuck yeah. You have to. Can you watch?
Need to see a psychologist after listening to this?
Can they watch it on company time? That's the big question. Yeah. Like, I'm in the boardroom. I'm watching that mental health thing, Like, the lad said it was okay. Like,
I'm meditating. I'm doing my journal.
Yeah, there's gonna be a lot of bullshit artists now. They told me that I needed to take, a 2-hour walk, like on Tuesdays, to help my fucking. Or go in the cinema, get some popcorn, watch this as a team,
There you go. Aye, fucking hell. I need me to watch that, mate.
No, thanks. Appreciate it, guys. We'll catch you for part 2 then.
Yep. Cheers.
See you guys. Bye.